So I welcome you to this session again. It's unpacking the box or getting out of the box or unboxing our thinking, something along those lines. We don't want to be in the box anymore, and we definitely want to get those materials that you have out of the box so that we can get our students out of the box of math being difficult and unattainable. So what we're going to take a look at here just for the next 10 minutes to go through our comprehensive standards-based curriculum. And just know that it is built to align to every state's standard. So if you have your box with you, we're going to go ahead and open the box and pull out your spiral bound book. That is our teacher's guide. Sometimes it's also referred to as the unit guide, depending on which version you have or what you're reading. So we're going to call it a teacher's guide or a unit guide interchangeably. The guides are spiral bound, and they include page-by-page directions for all of the activity sheets, all of the assessments that are included with the unit. There is one guide per box. However, there may be multiple units per grade level. So there's one guide per unit, but there may be, so for instance, in kindergarten, there are 4 units. First grade, there are 4 units. Second grade are 4 units. The upper grades have 10 units. So there you're going to have a spiral bound book that goes with each of those units. So one per box. As we go through, then also keep in mind when you're looking at it, at the beginning of each teacher's guide, when you open it up, there is a unit overview that gives you really a comprehensive information for the contents of the entire unit. So it's your front end piece for the entire unit that is inside that box. So this includes the introduction to the unit, directions to the to access the standards and the alignments, the objectives, the vocabulary, the parent and caregiver communication letter, pre and post test directions, and progress monitoring. So that's what we're going to do, is dive into each of those a little deeper here so that we can take a look. So again, each unit begins with an introduction. It reviews the goals and the focus of the unit as a whole. There are instructions on how to view and download the available alignments. And so the alignments are found on touchmath.com/alignments. So they're going to align to Common Core state standards or the individual state standards. And they also serve as supplements to any core math program that's already in place. So again, you can reference the alignments by going to touchmath.com/alignments. It may be www.touchmath.com/alignments. Double check me on that if you need to, but it is on our website /alignments, however you get to our site. Now, the unit overview also outlines the objectives and the vocabulary covered in each module. So when you think about the unit, there are units and there are modules. The unit overview gives you everything that you're going to see in every module, but these lists are also broken down as you go through each module. So for instance, what you're seeing here on the screen, there are 11 objectives throughout the unit, but there may be 3 in module 1, 3 in module 2, and what's my math? Then we're going to go, maybe 3 in module 3, and then we've got 2 more in module 4, right? So whatever the case may be, they'll be broken down in their subsequent modules. Same with the vocabulary. The vocabulary list in the unit overview is the vocabulary for the entire unit, but they're going to be broken down respectively into their modules as you go through. So this is just a sneak peek at everything that you're going to see as you go throughout the modules. The next thing you'll see is a parent letter. And the parent letter is a way to, we know that the approach to Touch Math is most effective when both educators and caregivers are able to reinforce the methodology together. So what's going on in the classroom is reinforced at home. So what we do is we provide this parent guardian letter to help connect home and school through Touch Math. So this letter reinforces the numerals and counting patterns, and it also provides the Touch Math website. So so that the parents and caregivers can visit if they require additional information. As you look at it, you'll see that you can print it out. There's enough space at the top as well if you need to use the school or the district letterhead to make it more official. So we've also provided that space for you as well. Next, you'll see if you have second grade or upper grades. This doesn't count for pre-K, kindergarten, and 1, but in second grade and upper grades programs, they both contain a unit pre-test to pre-assess the concepts and skills that are covered within the whole unit. Kindergarten through pre-K through first grade only have pre-test and post-test for the modules, not for the entire unit, okay? So these units, these unit pre-test and post-tests that are in the second grade and the upper grades, these will be in addition to the module pre-tests. So I'll reiterate, in second grade and upper grades, you're going to have pre-test and post-test for the modules, and then you're going to have pre-test and post-test for the unit overall, and then as well as pre-test and post-test for the modules. So the big idea, and then breaking it down into the subsequent modules as well. Now, following the unit overview, you'll now start to see the modules. These are standards-based, in our standards-based unit, the modules that would be maybe between 5 to 8 modules, which focus on specific skills, or we call them clusters, within the unit. So you'll see maybe 5 to 8 modules within each unit. And then they will be clustered. Now, this isn't in pre-K. We're going to not consider pre-K for this. So the arrangements, and we'll talk about this a little further down, how it differs from in different grade levels. But for the most part, each standard-based unit includes between 5 to 8 modules, which focuses in on specific skills or clusters within the unit. So we're giving you this top-down approach, if you will, and we're digging deeper. So we started out at the unit level, then we go into the modules, and then now we get into the clusters or the skills. Each module overview begins with an introduction. This introduction reviews the goals, the focus of the modules, the standards are listed, and you can also find, again, the additional information on how those alignments how the standards are aligned if you go to touchmath.com/alignments. So each module overview contains an introduction, an indication of the standards, a list of objectives, and the list of required prerequisite skills for that module. There's also a list of vocabulary words that are covered in the module, an itemized list of any needed manipulatives or materials. So now you're seeing how your kit, your curriculum kit, now comes together with your manipulatives kit, and it tells you up front exactly which materials you need to pull. So whether it's your base 10 blocks, whether they came from, you already have base 10 blocks, or whether you're using your TouchMath number line, whether you're using, you just need some graph paper. It's going to tell you what you need. So it's not just TouchMath materials that are included in the list of things required, the materials required. It's anything that aligns to the content of the modules. You'll also see that there are literature connections that really help reinforce the modules, the targeted skills within the modules. And I love that part. And a lot of these you can find on YouTube that are being read, and some of them are being read by the author. So it's a great literary connection between math and literature, which I absolutely love, having been a reading specialist. There are the modules then continue with a progress monitoring record to go along with each cluster. And then there's a pre-test. So we're just going through page by page in your teacher guide. And now you're at the module pre-test. The pre-K and kindergarten pre-tests are designed to be given orally, while the first, second, and upper grades are all presented in a format that will be ready for students, that will ready students for even their tests, their high stakes testing. They're presented in a format that will be very familiar when it comes time for testing. So in this case, it'll be in a written format. Next, you'll see we're digging deeper. The modules are broken into clusters, again, reinforcing that we're focusing in on a particular skill. And then there's an introduction to the cluster, what skill. And now we get into page by page activity sheet directions, and these are divided by clusters. So these activity sheets provide just hundreds of opportunities for students to quickly gain confidence and competence to help them achieve their AYP goals, meet NCLB and IDA requirements, and really prepare those who struggle with grade level concepts, get them prepared for testing and just for competency again, and confidence in these skills. So hundreds and hundreds of activities for the students. So this is really the bulk of your teacher's guide, is what, because now you have the directions. So we're in our kit, we have our spiral bound folder, but then for each module, you have your activity sheets. These are essentially your masters that you will copy and use for your students. But within the manual, you also have them with the answer guide, the answer keys. So this is very handy. I'll pull it back out for you. You've got the folder. So you've got one folder for each module, and then you've got a nice divider page, which is on cardstock. You've also got a, what do we call this? You've also got the tab. I can't think of what it was called. And then again, you have the activity sheets for your students. So we separate those out if you haven't done so already, and put them in their handy dandy folder that comes for each one of those modules. So this is module 1 for the kindergarten unit. Now, while each grade does contain some unique features, overall, every standards-based teacher's guide will include a teacher's script. So again, as we go through our teacher guide, if you're following along with me, let's see, I'm again in kindergarten, and I am in module 1, cluster 1. And now under my cluster introduction, I have the instructions for the teacher script, and then instructions for completing the activity sheet, multi-sensory directions, right? So that we're including manipulatives for this concrete support for our students, group and individual practice suggestions, whiteboard samples, and thumbnail answer keys for each activity sheet. So it's all there for easy reference as you go through your module, your unit 1, module 1, cluster 1 is what I'm looking at here, but as you go through your teacher guide. Now, as for the unique features, second grade and upper grades generally follow the same layout with easy to follow teacher script, the guided page directions, those things that I just shared with you. The whiteboard samples are included for reference. You've got icons there for, again, your multisensory and group instructions. So I'm looking at some of the icons here, and there is a key for the icons, and they become very familiar. You will become very familiar with what those icons are, but there is a key in the very beginning to tell you what they mean, and then you'll become very comfortable with them. Whiteboarded samples are included, and then additional features that include call outs for differentiated instruction, basic background, instructional insights, just to give you these tips and tricks as you go through, and your teachers. So we talked earlier about, one of the questions we get is, where do I start? How do I know where to start? Well, a lot of that is going to come from here, these instructional insights. Also, directions and support that really make the instruction and the planning easy. We know teachers are smart. We know you know how to plan, but you've also got a lot on your plate. So why reinvent the wheel? It's all right here. So follow the plan. This is what the research says works. So just go ahead and follow the plan. Now, first grade does follow a similar layout to second grade, but it has simpler directions and more engagement opportunities that are appropriate for the younger students, right? The concrete representational abstract sequence is labeled throughout. So it's easy to identify at which stage the student is struggling. So when you see, right, that they're struggling at the representational stage, you don't have to figure that out. It is labeled right there that they're at the representational stage, and that's where you need to focus your attention and focus the students' efforts. Teacher monitoring during the individual practice is encouraged here in first grade, and benchmarks are noted. So this helps educators know when to stop and assess mastery before moving on. Again, that's one of the most frequently asked questions that I get with TouchMath. When do I know it's okay to move on? And these benchmarks provide that guidance on when it's okay to move on, either to the next module or even the next unit, depending on where you are at this point. So that guidance is provided as well. So for anybody that's new, or you're just newly introducing this to your teachers, your staff, that guidance right there, hands down, is one of the most useful resources. Now, the kindergarten program simplifies directions even further so that the educator can spend more time with modeling and student action than reading a script, right? So the directions are very simple. Again, the concrete representational abstract sequence is labeled throughout, and then also integrated center activities, which allow students at different levels to explore appropriate concepts in small groups, which makes complete sense, right? They're in kindergarten, but knowing that, we made sure that we integrated center activities because that is what's age appropriate at that point and developmentally appropriate. And again, the benchmarks are noted to help the teachers stop and pause before switching to some of the more advanced concepts, making sure that we're checking in with our students and that we know where and when it's okay to move on. And finally, the pre-K program, it follows a thematic approach. So this one is going to look the most different, but it's really cool. It follows a thematic approach and a main character called Scout. Now, Scout is a gender-neutral character, and Scout takes students on different adventures within each of these different themes. They get activity badges and other materials that are included for engagement and excitement. And then again, literacy activities are integrated into all of the activities. So this is, for me, I just absolutely love this. And although I was a middle school and high school teacher, I'm like, I want to do this with a pre-K because I just love the idea of math being a story. It's a journey, it's an adventure, and Scout is going to take our pre-K kids on this adventure. Now, for each lesson, small group circle time activities are included, and introducing the activity mats as a part of the story as well. Teacher modeling, student movement, stories, rhymes, music, all of those are reinforced through these small group circle time activities that are included. Some of the other things we're going to see in the pre-K program: emerging, developing, and mastering directions are presented for every activity so students can learn and progress as needed. And that, again, teachers are able to monitor where the students are and whether it's time to move on based on, are they emerging, developing, and mastering. And then manipulatives are also built into this program to reinforce the concrete understanding, building the strong foundation for mathematical understanding. So keeping that in mind, sometimes we move our students too quickly from concrete to representational to abstract. So we make sure we really do focus in on that concrete here before moving the students on. So again, all of the grades, yes, all of the grades have a module assessment for post-test or a post-test. So all of them do. We just talked about the differences, but all of them to some degree are going to have this assessment or post-test at the end. The younger grades have a single page assessment, while the older grades have multiple pages, including a review and a post-test. And while module post-test questions are different than the pre-test, so there was a pre-test, there's a post-test, the questions are different, but they are similar skills to help assess the progress from beginning to end, right? So they're different questions, but they are very similar because we want to know to what degree they've progressed and where we may need to intervene. And speaking of intervening, all of the modules have some form of post-module activities for intervention. So first, second, and upper grades have differentiated instruction remediation, practice and challenge activities, as well as really cool real-world applications. It's hard to say real world applications. But so those are for the first, second, and upper grades. Pre-K and kindergarten, they include connection activities to help students integrate math experiences throughout the student's entire day. So I mentioned this before, but these include center activities, literature suggestions, transitions, the activities we do between subjects. What do you do during recess, standing in line, things that they can do during those transitions so that it's not time wasted, it's not time off task, it's still instructional time. We're making it engaging and exciting and relevant to math while we're still getting them to recess. And then homeschool activities as well, so that we can extend the learning outside the classroom. And I want to be careful when I say homeschool, making sure that we remember we're not just talking about if you're a homeschooler. This is the home school connection. So these can go home with the students, even though they do come to school every day, we send these activities home. So this isn't homeschool as in these kids are homeschooled, not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is the home school connection. So those are enrichment and remediation activities that are provided at the end of every module. Kindergarten through upper grade all include a unit post-test. So we have unit assessments, we have post-test, mastery of the post-test suggests that the student is ready for the next unit in that current grade, or maybe ready for the next grade level content if they have completed the final grade level unit, right? So either they're going to progress to the next unit or they're going to progress, they're going to progress to the next unit within a grade level, or they're going to progress to the next grade level, depending on where you are in the continuum. Either of those are an option. Now, keep in mind, there are thumbnail answer keys. We talked about this before. If you're looking at your guide, notice that there are thumbnail answer keys on every page as it corresponds to the activity sheet in the module. But at the end of the unit, at the end of each unit, there are, in the appendix, the answer keys are there as well. So they're going to be within context, right, on the pages within the unit, but they're also at the very end, all condensed into an appendix there. So we're just walking through the unit guide. The last thing that I want to share with you about the standards-based teacher's guide or unit guide, that there is a scope and sequence that is included in the for each grade level in the appendix. Okay, so you'll want to reference that as well so that you have a scope and sequence. And again, the scope and sequence helps answer the number one, asked question. I do believe it is probably in the top 5 asked questions. How do I know where to begin? How do I know when to move on? How do I know when my students are doing X, Y, and Z? How does this align to our standards or the curriculum that we're using? And scope and sequence is going to help you pull all of that together as well. Now, before we go, one other thing I want to point out to you is our RTI kit. Think of the RTI kit as a collection of instructional strategies and supplemental activities to support and augment your existing math curriculum. The first 10 to 15 pages are an introduction, followed by pre-test and post-test, and then activity masters. So not terribly unlike what we have in our standards-based curriculum, but it really is, the focus is on those activity sheets and these instructional strategies that you can just pull out based on what you're already doing in your existing math curriculum. So it is supplemental in that regard. Teaching aids and answer keys are found in the back of the packet. And again, we have section tabs to keep things organized. And each kit includes, it is a wide variety of teaching aids. So it's, you have the activities, but then you also have implementation suggestions. You have ways to just integrate hands-on learning, suggestions for piquing your students' interests. I'm trying to think of some of the other things, just things that are going to enhance your lesson plans. So we have activities for the students, but also we have implementation strategies for the teachers. And speaking of the implementation strategies, essentially they offer very simple and in a very simple and complete format. And they are also, when I say simple, I love the fact that they are printed on cardstock. So now you can put them in front of all of the activity sheets and segment them out that way. So there's this correspondence between what your implementation strategies are and the activities. So it's a nice way to keep things integrated, and also know that student directions are included on the activity sheet. So you've got teacher directions, you've got the activity sheets, and the activity sheets have student directions. So I'm probably overcomplicating the RTI program, because it really is a set of handy dandy resources to supplement your existing curriculum. And here's an outline of what you'll see when you go through the implementation strategies page. You're going to see your objectives, the materials needed, the math concepts being covered, the teaching tips, the hands-on activities, and the literature connections for each of those. And last, but certainly not least, gosh, we could spend an entire workshop on this. We can spend an entire hour on this, because there are so many manipulatives that we have to offer. So depending on what you have available, we've got the touch numerals, we've got the touch points, we've got touch points with pictures, the 3D numerals, the touch shapes, we've got dominoes, touch cards, student number cards, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, right? There's so much available. And again, when you go through your kit, whichever kit you have, you will see references to these materials throughout to say these are the ones that you're going to pull from the TouchMath manipulatives kits if you have them, and hopefully you do have them. The posters, the number lines, the skip counting posters and songs, the computational steps, all of those will be referenced at various points throughout, whether it's the standards-based curriculum or the RTI curriculum, so you know just when to use them. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to open it up for questions. Are there any questions? I think we can unmute the lines. Dr. Elliott?
Yep, they should. Karen, Vince, Heather, and you're still going to go through the Fidelity checklist, right?
Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, I'm going to actually share my screen for that.
Okay.
All right. I appreciate that reminder. Okay, so again, getting started. The best place, there are two things you want to do to get started. Everything that I just shared with you is really opening up the box and seeing what's in the box, but how to make sure you are using what's in the box so that you are implementing TouchMath with Fidelity, that is going to be found right here. So I'm going to accept my cookies. Two things, I would recommend that you download the implementation guide and the Fidelity checklist. So I went to TouchMath.com. I clicked on resources and went to teacher tools. So TouchMath.com, resources, teacher tools, and scroll down to find the implementation guide and the Fidelity checklist. Again, the implementation guide is really a it's a nuts and bolts guide, if you will. So what's in the box? If you have a standards-based program, just what I went through, outlining the teacher's guide, outlining the activity sheets, the RTI program, what's in the box, the implementation strategies, and the activity sheets. So it's really outlining for you and giving you a description similar to what I just did. But back over to the Fidelity checklist, and I think I have it open, but maybe I don't. So now with the Fidelity checklist, this is how we make sure we're doing it right. Now that you know what you have, are we doing it right? So you want to start with setting up the classroom. So if you are completely new to TouchMath, you know some teachers that are completely new to TouchMath, take them through this Fidelity checklist, print it out, and then you can check the box, or it's interactive here on the website. So you could just click through. You have your resources handy, the touch points, posters, everything is where it needs to be, and it's at eye level for the students. Are the touch lines and number cards readily available? A lot of teachers will take the number lines and tape them onto the students' desks, or maybe they're in the students' math folder. So everybody's got a number lines. Maybe you laminate them, although there is a nice coating on them, and other resources that are readily available for the students to be able to access immediately or when needed. The lesson objective is displayed. All the manipulatives are labeled. So we're just going to use this as a checklist to go through setting up the classroom, planning our instruction, and then what to do to teach the lesson, right? So this is basically before, during, and after the lesson. And use this as a checklist. Obviously, most of the things are happening during the lesson, but then post-lesson, we're going to take a look at assessment and progress monitoring. How are they doing? And how are they doing in relationship to where are they and where do they need to be? And how do I help close the gap to make sure that they get there in relation to their IEP goals or any of other goals that have been set for them? Have we communicated with the parents? Did we send home the letter? Have we also sent home some of those homeschool connection activities so that we make sure that we're on the same page with our parents? So this Fidelity checklist, again, is going to make sure that you are implementing TouchMath with Fidelity, that you're doing it right for the benefit of your students. So those are the last two things I plan to tell you and almost missed out on telling you. So downloading the implementation guide, downloading the Fidelity checklist at touchmath.com, going to resources, and then to teacher tools.